Governor of Maryland says that even though the work has been slow going, the Francis Scott Key Bridge near Baltimore is going to be rebuilt. At a briefing today, Governor Westmore said the rebuilding will actually be the last phase of the operation. Of course, right now the crews remain focused on recovering the 6 workers who were killed in that collapse. Bad weather, though, has complicated the recovery efforts, with rain and murky water making the dives dangerous for those recovery workers. Now, we did learn this week that the ship's owner petitioned a Maryland court to limit any possible liability, any payout, to $42 million.
Maritime law governs this situation, and to answer more of our questions on liability, because it's a lot, we bring in our legal expert, Whitney Traylor, to talk about this. So just start with the very basic analysis. How do you decide who legally would be liable?
Well, this is the epitome of what you call complex civil litigation. I mean, there's so many moving parts here, and there's going to be a lot of liability and years of litigation. But here, the starting place, as you mentioned in the lead-in, is actually maritime law. So it's not Maryland law or, state law, federal law. This is maritime law, which is really interesting. So that's really the starting place, is what law governs. And so that's the starting place. And then the second part of that is what happened on Monday. The owner and operator of the ship filed a limitation of liability petition in federal court. And essentially what that is that's from the Limitation of Liability Act of 1851, which says a ship, any damage that they cause in maritime on the water, is limited to the cost of the vessel and the cargo. So that's why they filed a petition for essentially saying we're only liable for $43 million.
You think normally maritime law would involve accidents at sea, but in this case you're talking about the bridge.
Right.
You're also talking about 6 people who died.
Yes.
So it's not just about money per se as far as civil litigation. I mean, there could be a criminal component to this as well if that ship wasn't seaworthy when it tried to leave the harbor.
Well, and that also speaks to the potential defendants, because here you're going to have certainly the ship owner and operator, but maybe you even have the Coast Guard or the regulatory agencies who certified the ship as being safe. So you also mentioned what will also be a component of this, which is a wrongful death claim. And so part of that is going to be determined or facilitated based on the investigation that happens here, and that will happen as part of the Limitation of Liability Act.
Would you guess, though, that with the bridge being involved, that's not a piece of the sea?
Right, that's not a piece of the sea, and that's a really interesting issue because the damages under this act are limited to things, non-economic damages. So, for example, the cost that the city, the damages that they suffered because all the businesses that were shut down, they may not be able to recover those from the ship if this limitation of liability is imposed. And so part of that is an investigation to determine, was there negligence? So if there was negligence, which some people are saying, yes, there had to have been negligence for this to have happened, but there's going to be an extensive years-long investigation.
That's the thing. I mean, the NTSB is involved, and if they investigate a plane crash, it's going to take years.
Yeah.
But usually people get a lawyer in the meantime and start thinking of all the entities that they could possibly sue.
Well, and that's a nuance under the maritime law, because essentially you have to file a claim if you were damaged within 6 months in this court, or you may waive your entire rights.
Wow.
So it's a really unique process, and you're seeing now, if you just online, there's people advertising, hey, we do maritime law, we can help you with this.
You just hope that, I don't know, when you think of these workers' families, that get somebody that's good, that knows what they're doing, that's not just chasing a buck.
What about the component of the ship flying under a foreign flag? And you have that further complicates things, I imagine.
That does complicate things, but that also is a reason why some people are petitioning to amend this law, because the majority of the ships are international and just in our ports. And so in this case, it was both, they were both Singapore, both the owner of the ship and the operator were both from Singapore. So that's another issue, saying, hey, we're limiting the liability for damages caused on our soil, and it's foreign companies.
It's a terrible and tragic story, and it's certainly complicated from a legal aspect. We'll continue to follow it. Good to talk with you. Thanks, Whitney.
Sure thing.